A black knight standing behind Fan Shuin said, "Rumor has it that even the 10 great nascent divinity tribulation realm elites could not break Golden Court Mountain's barrier after they joined forces. Such a formation is truly amazing." Fan Shuin nodded lightly and said indifferently, "4 of you will accompany me up the mountain while the rest will stay here and wait." Understood. At this moment, a figure shot toward them from the top of the stairs at lightning speed. It was none other than Mingshi. He came to halt a short distance away from the barrier. He looked at the people beyond the barrier to confirm they were the black knights he had seen in the forest. The person standing in the lead, who wore black armor and a black tiger mask with a tall and muscular body, had to be the infamous Long Luo. He felt chills running up his spine when he looked at him. He did not dare to act recklessly. He cupped his hands together and said, "The master invites you up the mountain." Fan Shuin glanced at Mingshi and said in a deceptively soft voice, "The Evil Sky Pavilion's 4th disciple, Mingshi, you killed 4 of my knights. However, on account of your master, I won't hold it against you. Senior, you're truly magnanimous. However, I was only defending myself since they persisted on hunting me down." Mingshi said. A black knight standing behind Fan Shuin retorted coldly, "Weren't you the one who infiltrated the Black Knight's headquarters first? I was just worried you won't convey the message to your leader. I won't be able to bear the consequences if I fail my task. All of you know what kind of person my master is, right?" Mingshi effectively stopped the Black Knights from retorting by bringing his master up. Fan Shuin raised a hand to signal his subordinates to not interrupt. Then he said indifferently, "I will never decline an invitation from your master. Lead the way." Based on his words, he was clearly confident in his strength. Compared to Fan Shuin, Mingshi preferred Zhou Xinchan better. At the very least, Zhou Xinchan had addressed him as Mr. Fourth. He liked the sound of that. Alas, it was unfortunate that Zhou Xinchan was dead. Mingshi walked up the barrier before waving his arm, and an opening appeared in the barrier. "Master asked you to go up on your own." "Interesting." Fan Shuin nodded. He walked up as the 4 Dark Knights trailed after him. The last Dark Knight to cross the barrier paused for a moment to look at Mingshi before he said, "4th disciple of the Evil Sky Pavilion. If we have the opportunity in the future, let's exchange some moves." Without batting an eyelid, Mingshi calmly said, "Master said that I'm not to fight without a reason." The Dark Knight did not reply and caught up to the others. Since 5 of them were wearing masks, none of their expressions could be seen. They left the remaining Black Knights at the foot of the mountain as they walked up the stairs that led to the Evil Sky Pavilion. Halfway up the stairs, Fan Shuin suddenly came to a stop and asked nonchalantly, "Who's hiding in the shadows?" A flash of black clothes flitted between the trees on the right, before it leaped from one tree to another. Little Yuan stood on a branch. She frowned and said, "Ugly." She had described him as ugly, not terrifying. One of the Dark Knights spoke up irritably. "My lord, the Evil Sky Pavilion doesn't seem to be showing us much respect." Fan Shuin raised a hand to cut him short. Then they continued up the mountain. If he could accept Mingshi killing 4 of his knights, but could not tolerate this insult, how would he be able to command respect as the leader of the Black Knights? When he was at the top of the blacklist, there was no shortage of insults being thrown at him. Regardless of how terrible the insults were, he did not take them to heart. His long years of training made it easy for him to disregard such matters. Little Yuan pulled a face at Mingshi before she flew back up the mountain. Perhaps she was the only one who could go up and down the mountain freely since she was loved by her master. Mingshi shook his head helplessly and said, "My little junior sister has always been this way. Please don't take her seriously." Fan Shuin said nonchalantly, "It doesn't matter." A moment later, they arrived at the Evil Sky Pavilion and slowly walked into the Great Hall. Mingshi swept his gaze across the hall. He discovered Zhao Yu and Yi Qianqing were present as well. They were sitting on chairs, looking exhausted. Meanwhile, Duanmu Sheng, Zhou Jifeng, Pan Zhong stood on the left. Fan Shuin placed one hand on his back that was as straight as a rod. His 4 subordinates stood in pairs behind him. The great hall was deathly silent at this moment. Everyone's eyes were trained on the 5 visitors. Fan Xiuwen looked at Lu Zhou, the old man who sat the highest place in the hall. He was stunned when their eyes met. Rumor had it that Ji Qiandao's days were numbered. Ji Qiandao's 1,000 years of cultivation would return to nature once his time was up. Fan Xiuwen had always had a talent for gauging a person's life aura. Indeed, this old man only had about 15 years left in him. However, he could not gauge the old man's cultivation base. If he had forcefully tried to probe the old man's cultivation base, it would be equivalent to a blatant provocation. This would not be the most rational course of action. Naturally, after a while, he said in a neither servile nor domineering manner, Fan Xiuwen pays respect to old Senior Ji. At the same time, Fan Xiuwen's four subordinates cupped their hands together in greeting as well. Lu Zhou could not see their faces. His expression was calm. One would find it difficult to read his mind based on his expressions. He said condescendingly, "Sit down." His tone was similar to the tone one with a higher status would use when speaking to those with a lower status. Fan Xiuwen cupped his hands together before taking a seat. "I heard you wanted to see me, old Senior Ji. I did not dare to delay, so I led the Black Knights here, without making any stops. I wonder what matters you wanted to discuss with me, old Senior Ji?" Lu Zhou stroked his beard. He pointed at Yi Qianxin and casually said, "I'm sure you recognize this person." Fan Xiuwen shifted his gaze from under his mask. He saw Yi Qianxin sitting on the chair opposite him. She was unusually pale. He shook his head and said, "I'm afraid I don't." He sounded honest. Little Yuan suddenly giggled and said, "This is my master's sixth disciple. She's my senior sister, Yi Qianxin." She made a spitting sound before saying, "Traitor! So, she's the Evil Sky Pavilion's sixth disciple. I apologize for my rudeness," Fan Xiuwen said softly. Lu Zhou nodded and calmly said, "Do you know about the Fish Dragon Village?" Fan Xiuwen's body stilled immediately. However, his thick and heavy armor and mask hid his expression. Nobody knew what he was thinking about. After a while, he shook his head, indicating he did not know about the Fish Dragon Village. After all, the village was too insignificant. As a leader of the Black Knights, why would he remember a minor village? He asked, "Why do you ask about the Fish Dragon Village, old Senior?" "Yi Qianxin," Lu Zhou said imposingly. Yi Qianxin shuddered slightly. She supported herself and spoke with no inflection in her tone. The Fish Dragon Village has a population of about 354 villagers. About 150 years ago, it was completely destroyed. She did not continue to speak after that. Yi Qianxin had investigated this incident after she left Golden Court Mountain. She went through many troubles only to discover all the signs pointed to her master, Ji Tiandao, whose name alone would shock the lands. Fan Xiuwen nodded and said, "I see. I'm truly sorry to hear the Fish Dragon Village has been destroyed. However," he turned to Lu Zhou and asked, "Is this the reason you summoned me here, old Senior?" "That's right," Lu Zhou said nonchalantly. "What does this have to do with me?" The records of the palace and local archives stated that I was the one who destroyed the Fish Dragon Village. Although Lu Zhou could not see Fan Xiuwen's expression, it did not escape his eyes that Fan Xiuwen's body had moved slightly as soon as he finished speaking. He wondered if this indicated Fan Xiuwen's surprise or nervousness. "Is that so?" Fan Xiuwen asked. A hint of shock could be heard in his voice. When Lu Zhou spoke about himself being the alleged culprit, everyone could see the unnatural expression on Yi Qianxin's face. The Black Knights is the special force of Great Yan's imperial family. They only operate in the shadows. It's only natural the palace archives won't mention the force, Lu Zhou calmly said. Fan Xiuwen cupped his hands and said, "Every cultivator knows that the Black Knights is the special force of the imperial family." "The Black Knights has never been to Measure Heaven River?" Lu Zhou asked. When Fan Xiuwen heard the question, he acted as though he had expected it. He was an intelligent person after all. As soon as Lu Zhou pointed at Yi Qianxin, he had known Lu Zhou would ask about this matter. Fan Xiuwen laughed hoarsely. His laughter resounded in the pavilion. "Well, let's put the incident at the Fish Dragon Village aside for now. In fact, I came here today to discuss a certain matter with you, old Senior. Speak, Lu Zhou said curtly. "The palace has a message for you." Fan Xiuwen's attitude suddenly turned respectful. The palace will not hold the Evil Sky Pavilion accountable for its various deeds in the past. This includes Mingshi Yin's killing of 4 Black Knights. The palace is willing to let bygones be bygones, but there's one condition. He paused for a moment before he continued to say, "The Evil Sky Pavilion must not interfere with the business of the Great Yan's imperial family for the next 10 years. Silence descended on the great hall. A few disciples exchanged looks among themselves. Even Fan Xiuwen's 4 trusted subordinates did not know about this. However, they were relieved that the mission from the palace was just this. This request was simple. There were many cultivators in Great Yan. Some of the experts were wary about the forces within the palace and would not meddle in the palace's various affairs. Some of them were offered amnesty by enlistment and became a part of some influential person's faction. After a slight pause, Fan Xiuwen added, "The Black Knights do not wish to be enemies with the Evil Sky Pavilion, nor do we have a right or strength. I'm saying this on the Black Knights' behalf. I hope you can grant us this wish, Old Senior." After that, he no longer spoke. After all, he had already stated his reason for being here. Everyone looked at Lu Zhou, waiting for his reply. However, Mingshi Yin broke the silence first with a chuckle. He said, "The last person in this hall who rambled on in such a self-righteous manner had flown on a crane to the Western Paradise. Are you trying to follow in his footsteps?" Fan Xiuwen cupped his hands together. "I dare not." Lu Zhou stroked his beard and finally said, "Lung Luo." Fan Xiuwen's heart skipped a bit when he heard this. His body involuntarily stiffened for a moment. Lu Zhou looked at Fan Xiuwen with a piercing gaze and said, "Are you trying to threaten me?" Regardless of how humble Fan Xiuwen's tone was or how respectful his manner was, anyone with half a brain would be able to hear the underlying threat hidden in his words. The Evil Sky Pavilions might struck fear into people's hearts, whether it was due to Lu Zhou or his 9 disciples. Even if they discounted Yu Jinghai and Yu Shangrong, no forces would dare to take the Evil Sky Pavilion lightly. What gave Fan Xiuwen the confidence to speak such words or stop the Evil Sky Pavilion from meddling in the imperial family's affairs if they so wished? What was that supposed to mean? Fan Xiuwen rose to his feet and cupped his hands together again. "Since you're privy to my identity, Old Senior, why would you put me in a difficult position? Lung Luo has disappeared 300 years ago, along with the grace and grudges of the past. You're older than me, so I should address you as older brother. To be honest, being on the blacklist is not something I'm proud of. In fact, it has become an unremovable stain in my life." He spoke passionately with such self-righteousness that it made people cringe when they heard his words. This person who was once on the top of the blacklist and had committed every evil act imaginable and unimaginable under the heavens said that he was ashamed of his past and had turned to the path of righteousness? Was that not funny? Fan Xiuwen continued to say, "As for threatening you, the Black Knights won't dare to do such a thing. We're merely conveying the palace's message. There's nothing I can do even if you choose to reject this request." Silence descended on the great hall again. Mingshi Yin snorted, breaking the silence again, and said, "If you know your request will be rejected, aren't you just wasting your breath by saying it in the first place?" Duanmu Sheng spoke frankly. "You're asking the Evil Sky Pavilion to not meddle in the palace's affairs. According to your logic, if we agreed to your request, even if a person from the palace would cut me open, I'd have to bear with it and endure it. 5th junior sister Zhao Yu's cultivation base was sealed by someone from the palace before she was sent to the holy altar for a marriage alliance. Who's going to answer for that? Who's going to answer for the destruction of the Fish Dragon village?" Duanmu Sheng asked. Everyone was surprised by Duanmu Sheng's eloquence. After all, he was a man of few words. Lu Zhou stroked his beard and said, "Lung Luo, did you hear that?" It seemed like he agreed with Duanmu Sheng's words. This gave Lu Zhou's disciples a burst of confidence. After all, such a situation was unlikely to happen in the past. If they had spoken out of turn, they would bring disaster upon themselves. Fan Xiuwen cupped his hands and said, "I can't defy the palace's orders. Old Senior, there's no need for you to lower yourself to the palace's level." "No, you don't understand." Lu Zhou rose to his feet, and began to descend the stairs with his hands on his back. This simple action caused Fan Shouwen to stand up as well, clearly wary. At this moment, Fan Shouwen's four subordinates felt slightly worried as well. Ji Tiandao was a villain known for his fiery temper and unpredictable mood swings. It would not surprise anyone if Ji Tiandao lost his temper at the slightest disagreement. Zhou asked again, "Is the Black Knight responsible for the destruction of Fish Dragon Village?" His knowing eyes were trained on Fan Shouwen. He held a deadly strike card in his hand as he waited silently for the answer. His question resounded across the hall. When the weak and dazed Yi Tianxin heard this question, her eyes widened. She looked at her master incredulously before looking at Fan Shouwen, who was standing opposite her master. She felt her heart racing as she thought to herself, "Is there really another side to the Fish Dragon Village's story?" The atmosphere turned tense and heavy. Fan Shouwen did not answer Zhou's question directly. Instead, he said, "Other tribes will never be allowed to exist in Great Yan's lands. There were too many of them at Measure Heaven River." As he spoke, he casually glanced at Yi Tianxin. This was as good as a direct admission. Fan Shouwen was intelligent. He knew that arguing about the matter or denying the truth were meaningless in this situation. The Evil Sky Pavilion would not have summoned him here if they did not have sufficient reason and proof. Upon hearing Fan Shouwen's words, everyone exchanged a look. "Did you tamper with the records in the palace and local archives?" "I did." Fan Shouwen did not deny the allegation. Instead, he said, "There aren't many who have access to the palace's archives. Old Senior, do you have an informant in the palace?" Zhou turned around suddenly, ignoring Fan Shouwen's question. "So, you were the one who slandered me?"